Hi, beautiful. Welcome back. So, talk about delayed obedience. I was actually given this idea in high school to do really casual, just like girl chat, Bible study vibes with y'all here on YouTube. And now it is like 5 years later and we're actually doing it. On here, y'all know the vibe is sisterhood. Of course, like I don't know the details of your life and you don't know the details of mine, but this is a place and a community where we can encourage each other to grow and to become the people that we were made to be. And while I'm not a teacher, I am not a leader necessarily in the spiritual space, I do want to make more of an environment for us to kind of learn together. And so as I'm reading through the Bible, we're going to have these little short videos where we kind of go through one chapter at a time, just parsing out and with me sharing anything that really stood out to me. So for context, the Bible is one of those books where you can read one verse a million times and still have different things you're learning from it. This is a super high level, honestly, super broad and like general, but hopefully will be helpful for you. And I think the more times that I go through this, the more I'll be able to do it without like chopping and cutting the video up. But yeah, excited to start doing this with you guys. Dear Lord, I thank you for this time. I thank you that we are alive, that we have the resources to be able to be, for me to be able to be recording, talking, for people to be able to be listening. I pray that even through the imperfections of us learning, that you would make grace for the gap and that you would just honor our hearts in wanting to grow closer to you and wanting to put effort into learning more about who you've called us to be and in wanting to really reflect you in the world around us. Pray that you would bless this time today and bless the learning and reading of your word. We're going to open up to Proverbs 1 and you can just take a second to read through it yourself. Pause this video and do that and then come back when you're done and we'll start going through it. And I just have like my notes on my phone. So I love Proverbs, honestly, just because I feel like it's a really practical book. It's a book of wisdom. That's kind of why I picked it as the first one for us to kind of just walk through. So reading Proverbs 1 through 7, it talks a lot about just the theme of the book. I'm reading from ESV, but verse 7 really stuck out to me where it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." And when I think back to times where I didn't want to take advice or where I was just doing my own thing, the reason why I didn't want to take advice was just because I was doing dumb stuff that I knew was dumb and I didn't want to stop doing. And so I think it's funny that the acknowledging God and having that like honor, reverence, fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, because when I was in that stage, it took me having to come to a place where I realized, oh my gosh, like I actually need God to start growing in wisdom and knowledge. So just acknowledging the fact that this verse really is true and I've seen it and seen it play out in my own life. Another thing that really stood out to me in going back to verses 2 was how gaining wisdom and instruction and words of insight helps us to act in a way that is just and fair in the middle of a world where there's so many crazy things going on, and acknowledging the fact, or at least for me, like that I can only really be responsible for how I move throughout the world. And the fact that the more that you learn about God and his wisdom and his instruction, the better you're able to align with his plan and how he sees people and things, and just how you respond to what happens around you. And another thing that really stood out to me, being in my early 20s, I talk about this a lot, but it can be really hard trying to pursue like the wisdom and knowledge of God at a young age, especially in Western society. A whole nother conversation. But it talks about how in verse 4, how like receiving this wisdom and everything will give prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. And I think I found in my journey and walk that discretion is such a big, it's just such an important thing. The ability to be able to, yes, discern what's good and bad for you, what might be right for you, what's not right for you, but also to have the ability to like carry out that decision. And this, just how this states how it might not be something that will come naturally, but that it's something that's given to us even in our youth, is really encouraging. Along those lines, another thing that's really encouraging for me is that it's so clear that wisdom is not only for like the super like top-notch, highest educated people. Like, yes, while Solomon and David were both kings, this passage really highlights the fact that even for the simple, for the rich, for the poor, for the smart, like, everybody is able to receive wisdom. No one is exempt in that sense, but also even knowing in our own weaknesses and times where I can feel like I'm just not smart enough or don't have the capacity to be wise, that's not true, that's a lie, because it is for everybody. Something that I wrote out of this, again with verse 7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, is having a love and respect for God encourages honoring what's wise and best for you. Once you realize that God wants what's best for you, you'll find that ways of wisdom actually line up with those things that are also best for you, while choosing other paths would actually end up hurting you. So everything is very circular and it all kind of ends up coming together. But when you start honoring God, you also start having this knowledge and awareness of your value as a human being and how important it is to act in a way that reflects that value. Now, the next few verses really talk about warning against how there are things in society that will tempt us into acting in a way that isn't good for us. And going into verses 20 to 22, it's kind of this questioning, this rhetorical but very serious questioning of how we are in our lives. And this really got me. Just reflecting on these verses and the fact that greed and walking into foolishness, walking into things that we think we want for ourselves is literally a trap. We say that we'll do things for the plot, but the plot is like a disorganized, toxic Netflix rom-com. That is not what the plot of our lives should be. In verse 22, wisdom calls us to do better, be better. It's that voice in the back of our heads that's like, how long are you going to keep doing this thing that's not working? How long are you going to be simple-minded? How long are you going to do things for the plot? And with this, not changing our ways kind of guarantees these bad cycles, bad habits in our life. Verse 32 literally says, "For the waywardness of the simple will kill them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them." And the reason for this is said in verse 31 that they will eat the fruit of their ways. And so the way that we act through our lives, yes, while you can do things in the moment, know that every cause has an effect. And you're basically putting things into reality with every moment, every decision that you make. And not to put like a ton of pressure on yourself or anything and not to cause any anxiety, because we don't want that, but in recognizing that whatever you are consistent in, whatever way of being is a theme for you, you will experience the fruit of that at one point or another. And so the sooner that we decide to change from those simple ways and grow into who we are meant to be and act like we're meant to act, the sooner we'll see those results in our lives. And the comforting part of this, verse 33, "But whoever listens to me will live in safety and be at ease without fear of harm." Listening to wisdom brings peace. It brings security, peace, and a lack of dread for disaster. And the reason why is quite simple. One, you're living in the ways of God, so you're under his covering, kind of like if I was walking down the street with somebody and it was raining and they were holding an umbrella. The closer I walk to them, the less the rain is going to touch me. The closer that you walk to God, the less the things of darkness of this world have access to you. Easier said than done, but a simple principle. And secondly, listening to wisdom brings peace because you're not setting yourself up for failure. You're not setting the screen to be tripped up by life. You're not putting yourself into compromising situations. Life is full of consequences of our actions. And when your actions aren't always bad for you, you'll find that you experience less bad consequences. Life is never going to be perfect. Life is hard. And so I always say, like, why would I make life even harder for myself by putting myself in bad situations or by choosing to be in bad relationships or whatever that may be, because life already is hard. And so it brings a lot of peace to know that you're living your life in a way that's actually helpful for you and that will help grow you. And that's just aligned with how you're meant to be. Ultimately, living in integrity really does protect you. It protects your soul, it protects your body, it protects your being. And I think that we know this. It's just there's so many distractions, so many things that can be tempting or fun or just flashy that we would think we would rather indulge in or rather do instead of kind of be stricter with how we live our lives. And the hard truth of this is that once you're aware of this, once you know this, once you realize what you should be doing, when you choose to like live consistently in a different way, you are really putting like a block in a way between you and God, in the sense where he's like, I told you this already and you're not listening, like you're not being serious, and it creates a rift in your relationship to where this is like kind of sad to say, but God will watch you set out your own demise and be like, I told you and you should have listened. And it reminds me of the idea of Abba Father, God as our Father, because I know my parents did that for me, like telling me not to do something, watching me do it anyways, and then literally seeing me have to experience and deal with the consequences of my own actions. And a lot of times after dealing with those consequences, it changes our hearts, it empowers us, it makes us realize and our eyes really open to how we should be. But you don't want to test it, you don't want to play with it. And I think especially if you're in a similar age group as me, you've probably already experienced a lot of those pains, a lot of the hardships, a lot of the burns of living life in a way that's not aligned. I know I have. And I don't need to keep doing that. I don't need to learn another lesson by doing something stupid. And so it is important to really like take this seriously and take it to heart. And like, I do love Proverbs because it is so simple, but it's also very serious and it's very straightforward. There's not much wiggle room, there's not much coddling, is basically what I'm saying. I think there is a lot of hope and peace in the fact that we're given so much reassurance that, yes, while it's something that we have to learn, while it's something we have to practice, while it's something that might not come naturally to us, living living in a way where we're listening to wisdom, living in a way where we're being righteous, living in a way where we're listening to what God has called us to do, basically guarantees a peaceful existence, a peaceful being. And I think that's more of an internal peace than anything else, because life is still crazy, but the internal peace is just something special and something that is literally irreplaceable. Like Paul said, like, put me anywhere in the world, put me anywhere, but because of what God has given me, I'm gonna be okay. That can only be something internal, because there's some days maybe you'll get sick, or some days where it'll be uncomfortable weather outside, or maybe something bad happened at work. All of those things objectively should be retracting from your peace, but there's an internal peace that is very possible to experience, and that is promised to those who listen. And it says, whoever listens will live in safety and be at ease without fear of harm. And that is just so encouraging to me, especially as a girly who has struggled with anxiety for a long time. Uh, very encouraging to just have that reassurance. But that was our first chapter, Proverbs 1. Proverbs, honestly, I kind of just want to go through like the whole book. When I first got this idea, or I'll say when God first gave me this idea to do like going through chapters of the Bible in a very like casual conversational way. It was like a daily devotional thing. So like hopping on here every day and just talking to y'all and doing like a cut and dry video. So there's 31 chapters in this book, and maybe I'll challenge myself to just sit and like quick talk to y'all quickly every day and like upload it quickly onto YouTube. We'll see how that goes, but I hope that this was encouraging to you. Leave any like questions or comments down below. If you want to ask me something but don't want to like post it publicly, feel free to DM me on Instagram. It's the same username, just jazzy_Araya, and I will get back to you when I can. But be encouraged. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next video. Bye.